Hello, my name is Maria Fiorito. I'm finishing the UF Masters in Art Education program, anticipated graduation August 2024. I'm an artist, wife, mother of 3 children, and a cat. I am of Greek, Scottish, Danish, and Mexican descent. I am from California and now live in Seaford, Virginia, near Yorktown. I love art, creative projects, creating gelato recipes, gardening, opera, and building family traditions. My artwork can be found on my website, fioritoart.com. My capstone project is titled Reflecting Your Cultural and Ancestral History, How Creating Visual Imagery Strengthens Ancestral Connection and Self-Identity, an exploration of personal narrative and ancestral heritage through a creative process approach. Inspiration and connections. The inspiration for my capstone project is the family narrative, searching for ancestry and self within narratives past and present. Imagery is not only one of the most efficient ways to preserve memories, but also a tool for remembrance, reflection, connection, and understanding. As an artist, I have had experience to believe that creating imagery can be a more abstract and intentional way of meaning-making and self-reflection. After reflecting this past year on the search for my Greek relatives, I concluded that if I take this concept of imagery and create a series of artistic projects that reflected a deeper study into ancestral research, I could attain a richer conception of self-identity and understanding. This initiated my capstone project. Applin reflects on the idea that we are products of our personal and collective pasts. He elaborates that an essential component to obtaining a more comprehensive picture about oneself and provides inspiration and emotional influence is the family narrative. I believe exploring self-identity within past cultural, ancestral, and living personal narratives enhances the formation of individual identity and can promote appreciation for cultural similarities and differences of other people. Questions explored and research goals. My goal within this project was to complete 5 thoughtfully created artworks that reflected personal and collective narratives found within my ancestral and cultural heritage exploration. To lay a foundation and accomplish the goals of my proposed study, the questions I explored were: how can creating imagery that reflects one's researched cultural and ancestral heritage reveal a better understanding of self-identity? How do I perceive levels of my own conscientiousness and ability to construct meaning during the artistic process of creating work inspired by ancestry? How does the final visually recorded narrative strengthen connection between myself and my lineage? And will this change how I view the complex uniqueness and cultural background of other individuals? Scholarly insights. The concepts and scholars cited in this review emphasize the value in pursuing a path for self-actualization and reaching a mutual respect and empathetic understanding to support both connectedness, individuality, and cultural difference. The essential concepts and scholars which created a framework for my project are art as a cognitive endeavor, which both Eflin and Eisner, among others, maintain as a greater intellectual ability, and which abstract nature is integral to the creative process I practiced in my study. The inherent search for identity, or our identity within our present and connective past narratives, and translating meaning-making to art-making for identity. In my research, these were intertwined concepts dependent upon each other for artistic outcomes. Narrative research and finding meaning within them were necessary for creating artworks reflective of these concepts. Dissenyaki, Buffington, and Bolin uphold that art making is a transmission of culture, and the narrative issues we face personally and socially formulates a better understanding of our world and humanity in general, and would fundamentally offer a deeper understanding of ourselves as well. Our cultural existence and understanding the other. A goal in this project was that a better understanding of others would be a product of my creative project and search for identity, which stems from the influence of Green and Van Camp promoting that to understand the other, the new, the different, we must first understand our own uniqueness. Green supports Van Camp, stating that acknowledging the existence of undiscovered vistas and perspectives requires reflectiveness. Research methodologies. In this research project, I researched my past and living narratives in conjunction with the investigation of my artistic process, which strove to reflect that research. With a focus on both narrative and the creative process, I utilized qualitative research inquiry through arts-based and narrative research methodologies to be most productive. The methodologies that were used were arts-based research methodology. I used these methods for a self-reflective study with what Squire refers to as a researcher reflexivity, or self-reflection that involves internal dialogue. In this study, the researcher, me, became a participant, and this through my primary desire and motivation to begin the research. I created my own artwork that is reflective of my present personal narrative and my past narratives found within my cultural and ancestral research journey. I researched for meaning and practiced intentional meaning making, both of which were the basis of my visual concepts. Throughout the artistic process, I practiced reflective questioning of myself and how I relate to connections past and present, and recorded my thoughts in a reflection journal. I questioned and analyzed how my research influenced my artistic intentions, meaning, and technical process, recording this in my journal and taking photos of the process and outcome of my artworks. Artography methodology. Laschik defines artography as a form of practice-based analysis and performative pedagogy. After my ancestral research, I followed this critical and reflective creative process of becoming that would investigate identity and fortify connection between creation, myself the artist, and others as viewer. I challenged my artistic abilities, thoughtfully chose artistic methods and mediums that would reflect my chosen narrative concepts and symbolism, and defined my detailed artistic steps through the intrinsic motivation and ownership that drove me. Narrative methodology. It is a process of developing perspective, an elemental component for understanding that is most valuable when broadened by sifting through numerous research and recollected narratives. Narratives were my greatest resource, and as a product of my research, I learned about the narrator, my ancestor, and their world, and came to understand the world differently as they saw it. Narratives were the seeds for the creation of my artistic projects, as they were the basis and the influencing factors which meaning-making derived from. And remembering, researching, and recording narratives helped define my research conclusions, as Goodson suggests to do. Data and collection methods. Arts-based research is more often recorded through photographic means as well as reflective journaling, both written and sketched, all of which I practiced in my data collection. For my self-reflective study, I applied these methods of arts-based research, journaling my family history research findings, sketching ideas that reflect these, and photographing my creative process and progress, and recording my thoughts and reflections of such progress. My research and artistic data and their collection are the following. I reflected on my own memories of when I was younger, relating to interactions I had with relatives and my experiences with them and their world. And I compiled into a computer file photographs I found saved on my computer and on my Facebook albums. My notes and thoughts on these were recorded in my reflection journal for future analyzation. I reflected on past narratives of ancestors and deceased family members that I personally knew, whose oral stories I remember being told of when I was younger. When utilizing narrative methodology, recording and analyzing oral, written, and visual narratives were crucial methods to formulate research findings. I gathered information from researching narratives within my family trees on Ancestry.com, noting events, people, and interesting stories that had been recorded in their profiles. I recorded my findings in my reflection journal. I collected contextual background and tangible aspects such as historical events and locations by researching locations and time frames on Google relating to an ancestor. This helped me better understand the world in which they lived in. I recorded the creative process of my artworks and photographs and included reflective questions in my reflective journal to answer as I made artistic choices. Which personal reflexivity was integral to my creative brainstorming for each of my artistic reflection projects. Data analysis, applied reflective questioning on narratives. Analyzing data occurred throughout my project after narrative research and both before and after artistic creativity. After collecting narratives and posing questions for later reflection that would serve for creative inspiration, I returned to my reflective journal to analyze my research findings. I activated intentional meaning making by analyzing my recorded findings, hence changing the meaning as Goodson suggests to do following linear methodology. From research and narrative data, I incorporated methods of analysis that searched for and targeted potential themes and concepts that related to my research questions. I adopted Squire's narrative thematic analysis, a method in narrative methodology, which focuses on themes that develop across stories. From this analysis, I could move on to brainstorm for my reflective artwork. As Irwin charged the artist must do, after narrative analysis, I conceptualized, implemented, and analyzed my creative process in the hopes that its output would reveal the influence my research had on it. I noted and answered prompts and specific questions in my reflective journal to help analyze the narrative data collected, and this information was my path to creating intentional meaning making and information for my artwork. Reflective questioning in my reflective journal of myself and connected narratives, my subjective perspective from personal narrative, and creative output reimagined from these experiences are the culmination of my reflective process of becoming for a deeper sense of identity and connection between narrative, artist, creation, and viewer. Significant findings. There have been several significant findings resulting from the process and creative outcome of my artistic works and the research data woven into them. Creating imagery reflecting my researched cultural or ancestral heritage has revealed a multidimensional self-concept over self-identity. Within self-identity, I found my reflective artwork helped me remember what was important to me, my desires and interests, and how I belonged within a larger collective past. Understanding where I came from encouraged a healthier sense of self, and I learned from ancestor experiences that could help me navigate my own present life. Within creative productivity, I found that artistic conscientiousness, meaning an ability, strengthened when set within the bounds of a more complicated identity search among ancestry and living narratives. I found my applied methods to successfully transform memories and meaning making into artistic imagery can be applied to art making in general. I found that finding relatability, interest, and even oneself in applied research of a subject can lead to strong intrinsic motivation for artistic goals. These aspects naturally led to creative brainstorming and fueled my creativity and desire for visual communication in my artwork. Finding connections with relatives and their narratives surprisingly instigated a sense of responsibility. I felt that as my artworks would be reflecting not only myself but their narratives and cultural history, I had a duty to create renderings that documented life and tradition to the best of my knowledge, understanding, and memory. I also found individual aspects in artwork oftentimes morphed or were amended during the creative process. Tangential creativity could lead to pleasing outcomes in artwork over initial expectations and ideas. But I had to be careful, however, to not lose sight of narrative goals. I found within meaning making and understanding that while exploring memory and ancestral narratives for self identifiers, I found that having my artistic goals framed within the narrative theme of my cultural and ancestral heritage allowed for a richer and more rewarding cognitive endeavor. I found my artistic outcomes became visually recorded narratives that strengthened connection between myself and lineage. My narrative research on my relatives and the following creative process widened my perspective on how I view the complex uniqueness and cultural background of other individuals. It helped shed light on those with differing cultures and backgrounds, providing a deeper understanding of their humanity and offering relatability unforeseen prior to this project. Discussion and significance. Scholes defines narrative as a form of communication referring to events outside of itself, with no definitive end. I found this concept worthy of deeper appreciation and consideration. It made me think that narrative is changeable, can be added to and be reinterpreted, and more particularly is alive. When examined through a cultural heritage lens, the narratives of those ancestors who have passed on and the narratives we communicate about ourselves are inherently linked. We widen the perspective of human nature and allow for human relatability and understanding. This is a concept deserving of future exploration in art education today, specifically as it relates to cultural identity and appreciation. With a deeper understanding of the complexity and uniqueness of ourselves, we can better appreciate the reverence others have of their own cultural identity through our own introspection. I have experienced and learned through this investigation that we can strengthen our connection with ancestors while discovering a better sense of who we are through the creation of visual representations of our cultural and ancestral identity. I believe that our connection with family, ancestors, and those who share our cultural background will strengthen, and that this can change how we view and respect others of different cultures. Project outcome. These images are my completed artistic reflections, which can also be viewed along with more in-depth analysis of this capstone project on my website, fioritoart.com, and on this YouTube link. Recommendations relating to our education. Visual interpretations of human experience and narrative may provide answers to the universal question of who we are as an individual, our self-identity, and how we fit into our present and past cultural narratives. Consider the following for recommendations within the classroom. Art students may find unique opportunities for peer relatability by sharing their own narratives both orally and visually in the classroom. This can help promote appreciation for cultural similarities and differences. These questions may initiate further self-discovery. If narrative can play a role in our mental health and well-being, how can this translate into the classroom? How can research methods used in cultural history investigation be used on a broader level in the art realm to promote ownership in art? Can researching what inspires us also aid in the formation of individual identity? And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.